Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here to talk again about One Crisis from Crazy. And part of that campaign is managing the crazy in the face of this COVID pandemic. You'll know that we've been talking to a number of experts in my life, and today's topic is about practicing self-care during the pandemic. I decided if I wanted to talk about self-care, there was only one person on the planet who I could talk to, and that is Dr. Yetta Young. She is a good friend of mine who we are finally getting to see each other live. We have created a relationship through cyberspace. And you should know, Dr. Young, I am burning Black Girl Magic incense right now because that's what we're going to create today.
Awesome.
Let me tell everybody a little bit about you. Dr. Yetta Young is an incense burning, creative, edutainer, theatrician, I love that word, event producer, and journey facilitator. Her zone of brilliance is inspiring multi-passionate women through their personal and creative journeys by creating empowered, elevated, and sacred spaces for them, both on and offline. She's amazing. At her core, she is a hybrid of a self-care advocate, a creatorepreneur, I practice that, and an inspirational intermediary. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Yetta Young. We're so glad to have you. And you've got to start by telling us more about what is this great work that you do? What do you do?
So when I say that I'm a creatorepreneur, that just simply means that I create a living. I'm an entrepreneur that makes a living through my creative efforts. So I produce, I direct, I write, and then my latest venture is through my premium incense line. And so I help women to be intentional about their self-care through the power of burning. So, you know, through my videos, I always have to ask, what you burning?
I am burning Black Girl Magic.
And I'm going to burn self-care because I
love that.
I love that topic that we have. So self-care was actually the first incense that I created for the premium incense line. So I'm going to burn self-care in honor of tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to thank you for teaching me that fragrance and burning really should have some intention behind it. I like smell goods, and I would grab something from the gas station or wherever just so that things could smell good. And after I was introduced to your line, Incense, Love, and Meditation, right? After I was introduced to your line and you send the little notes with it and help us understand that this really is about creating a sacred space for ourselves. And so now I intentionally burn and I decide what is it that my soul or my spirit needs in that moment. And I go through my basket. I have a lovely basket with probably 20 of your packets in there. And I flip through and decide, what do I need in this moment? And as I light it, I set my intention. So I set the intention a few moments before we began and said, we are going to be two Black girls creating magic today. We're going to create magic for each other, and we're going to create magic for everyone that listens to this, especially those who need to understand the importance, the criticality of self-care. And then I took the fire out and now it's burning. So thank you for teaching me how to burn it.
Absolutely, you're very welcome.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about how you're personally doing in this pandemic. And of course, there are lots of things happening right now. Talk about the pandemic. How have you been managing?
So honestly, and you know, I try to be honest in everything. I would love to show up here and say, oh, I'm wonderful, I'm creating this and I'm creating that, because as a creative, you know, that's what I do. But It's been tough. I'm going to tell you, it's been very tough because I have an 8-year-old daughter. So I'm homeschooling. Although I admire all the homeschool teachers and all the moms, it was never my calling.
Sure.
And so now I've had to step into that role as, you know, not just a mom, but worrying about making sure that she's getting, you know, she's going to pass the 3rd grade.
Right.
Right. Now, you know, to make sure she passes the 3rd grade.
Sure.
So my king, he's working, so he's an essential worker, so I have to worry about him going out and being safe. So there were kind of a lot of things, you know, I would read all the posts about everyone saying, okay, if you don't create something new during this time, then you're just a loser, you know, basically. Wow. And it's like, no, this is a very critical time for all of us. All of us need to practice extreme self-care.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's not been as hunky-dory and rosy as some people have posted about. It's been challenging.
Sure,
It's been
sure.
challenging. We're making through, we're making our way through, but it has been challenging.
And I really appreciate your candor around that because, there's a lot of Facebook fantasy out there about all these people writing books and they're starting businesses and they're doing all building decks and all this stuff. And that's great. As my mother would say, more power to them.
Yeah.
But the reality is we are in a pandemic. We have not been, as a country, as a society, in this place for 100 years. So none of us have experience on how to live through this. And we've got to pull ourselves away from that feeling that you've got to create, you've got to do this, you've got to do that because we have all this time. Well, how much of that time is spent trying to make sure that your husband's not bringing something into the house, making sure he's healthy, right? How much of that time is spent making sure that we keep ourselves healthy, or that those people that aren't working right now, not everyone is blessed to be able to work from home. And so, like you, I had to reject that notion that I had to be superwoman during these times. I really did.
Yes, and one of the biggest things too I found myself struggling with is that I am a lot of people don't believe it, but I am a extreme introvert. Like that's how, yes, I am.
Really?
I am. Yes,
okay.
That's how
so you're supposed to be loving this time, Yetta.
People typically think that introverts are shy and meek and docile. It just simply means that how I refuel through my quiet time, through just getting recentered. Now my daughter, the 8-year-old we spoke about, Deja, is an extreme extrovert. So she wakes up talking and she goes to bed talking. I mean,
that's my kind of kid.
Yes, and so she's out scootering now with her dad. I mean, she's always on the go, always. And so I found myself during this time, usually she's at school. And so, this is my time working from home where I can get centered creatively, just spiritually, whatever I need to do. But now she's here. She's so, so I've had to rethink this whole quarantine and how my self-care looks during this time with, everybody in the house,
Tell us what you know to be true about self-care.
Well,
and tell us a little bit about what that even means. Let's even start there.
So for me, self-care means taking care of yourself. And I think we spoke earlier about, when you're flying, they always tell you that when the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on yourself first.
That's right.
And then you take care of your children or whoever else may be around you.
Sure.
And to me, that's the prime example of what self-care means to me, is taking care of self first. Because for me, without my retreats, I told you I need my time. I need to recenter.
Yes.
And so I do that through my retreats. I do that through just centering, going to the park, my baths. Those are very important to me. And then once I'm able to come out, I can take care of Deja. Then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go.
That's right.
But it is, and I know when I'm running on empty, it shows. I can feel like, okay, I need to step back.
Right.
And I need to take a moment.
Get that time. Yeah.
Within.
So go and tell us about, what do you believe to be true about self-care?
So what I believe to be true about self-care is that self-care comes in many forms, in many ways. I think we've heard just traditionally, especially in this pandemic, getting our nails done, our feet and our massages and stuff. And yes, while that is a form of self-care, that's not really all that self-care is. Self-care could be just as simple as, like I mentioned earlier, finding that quiet time when the kids go to sleep.
Sure.
That meditation, going within and getting still, putting the right foods in our body, which I'm working on that, moving our body. You know what I mean? Because it releases those endorphins so that we feel better, not just energetically, but it does something to us on a cellular level.
Absolutely.
And so, what I can tell you this is that what I know self-care not to be.
Okay.
I remember this was early 2015, and I'm gonna share something with you that I haven't shared before. But in late 2015, my daughter, she was four at the time. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is known as juvenile diabetes. And for those that don't know, it's very different from type 2.
Right.
Type 2 is what they call a lifestyle disease. Type 1 is the pancreas just stops working. So it produces no insulin. And so now she's insulin dependent. And so what that meant for me, for her at the time, she was a preschooler. I had to make sure that the teachers, that everybody at the school understood what that meant. They knew how to count carbs. They knew how to give insulin injections. They knew how to check her blood sugar. I mean, everything. And I spent that all of 2016. I was up at LA Unified School District. I mean, just advocating, you know, for my child. And that put a lot of stress on me. I didn't realize the stress that it put on me. But at the top of 2017, January 2017, I was 47 years old. I had a stroke. Yeah, I had a stroke. And so it was really at that time that I said, okay, I need to start practicing extreme self-care.
That's right.
And so for me, that's when I said, okay, I have to look beyond just the things that, you know, make us look good. I mean,
good.
It's great to have all of those things done. I mean, as the queens that we are, we're going to show up looking fabulous anyway.
That's right.
But how do we look on the inside? How do we feel on the inside? How are we managing our stress? How are we taking care of ourselves? How are we managing anxiety?
Right.
You know? So I had to look at those things. How was I really managing my stress levels? How was I managing how I was taking care of myself? Was I moving my body? Was I eating what I was supposed to eat? Was I taking that time for me to say, hey, enough? Was I putting myself on timeout? You know, I'm just saying, mommy needs some time right now. You know, I'm on a timeout right now. I'll be with you in a second, but mommy needs her time right now.
And there's something to be said for this period of time giving us the opportunity to really expand our thinking around what self-care is, because the first thing we think, especially as you say, the queens that we are, we think nails, hair, feet, massage, whatever that is. And in this shutdown, nobody could do much of anything. Right? And so, you know, many of us, unfortunately, and many of the women that I work with often have their sense of self built in how they look, how they're dressed, if their hair is done, their nails are done, and all of that. And if my sense of self was tied to that right now, if my sense of self was tied to the state of my feet right now, okay, we would not be having this conversation, okay? And
exactly.
You get it, right? You get it. It's like I sleep alone and I wear socks to bed. It's like, Lord, you know. So this really has given us the opportunity to think differently about what self-care is. And let me ask you this: many people, especially women, I'll layer it and say, especially Black women, tend to believe that self-care or too much time in self-care is selfish. Speak to that a little bit.
No, self-care is not selfish, because we've seen it. I just spoke about my breakdown. I have two other good girlfriends. One at 42, she had her stroke, and I'm noticing that Black women having strokes, the number is rising. My other good girlfriend was 45. Just this past January, she had a stroke. So if anybody thinks that self-care is selfish, let us be the example that it is not selfish. We have to take that time for ourselves. It is mandatory. Absolutely. It is not optional. It is mandatory that we take that time to go within for self-care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And if we can't care for ourselves, again, we keep using it, it hopefully will never become trite. The oxygen mask. If we cannot breathe, and is that not a timely statement? If we cannot breathe, then the people around us, the people for whom we are responsible in our circles of love or responsibility at work or whatever, they can't get what they need. And if we come to this experience of life, and the way I believe is that we're here to serve one another.
Absolutely.
I can't serve you, Dr. Yetta, if my cup is not full. Someone said to me, and I stole it and I used it, I wish I could remember where I heard it, that you can give of your overflow, but not of your essence. right? So if I am full and I have taken care of myself and I'm doing the things necessary, mind, body, and soul, and we'll talk about that in a moment, then I can offer that to others. But once my overflow is gone and you start digging, now I'm starting to give of my essence, then I'm giving you less than what you deserve as my compadre in this world, right? I'm giving you less than what I know myself being able to give. And so we really have to get that self-care is critical. That is one of the things that my friends will say. Joy's good at her alone time. They'll say it that way. She's good at her alone time. I will shut down in a minute, and it's like, you know what, everyone? when my daughter was younger, and I was married, I would occasionally on a Friday morning leave out of the door with my overnight bag and my briefcase and say, honey, I'll see y'all after work Monday.
Oh wow, I love that.
And just not only is it important for him to bond with his child, but also I needed to just get away. Yeah. And I have continued. I still get away. My child will tell you, my family will tell you, I will get away. And I know how long I have before it's time for me to get away. You have to know yourself. Absolutely. And I know about once a quarter. I mean, it doesn't have to be 2-3 weeks. Once a quarter, I need a good 4 or 5 days. It's just joy. Yeah. Just me. Yeah. And I prefer a beach. I prefer an island somewhere. And, I'm from Detroit. Sometimes it's just Belle Island, but, it can't always, I'm just saying, it's water and sand, right? So sometimes we have to do that. So thank you for sharing that and helping us to understand. If we continue to tell ourselves, we'll continue to believe or begin to believe self-care is, I think you said critical, it's crucial. It must be done so that we are whole, right? One of the things we talked about earlier is different ways of looking at self-care. And I particularly like a model I call the PIES model. And it's an acronym: physical, intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual. So let's think a little bit about how would you suggest someone in each of those areas to offer themselves self-care? So like for the physical, and some you've already mentioned, but feel free to share them again. And remember, we'll talk physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual. What would you say in the physical realm? What kind of things should we be doing to take care of ourselves?
So in the physical realm, definitely moving our bodies, even if it's just 15 minutes a day. That could include jumping jacks, planks, walking. If you have stairs, walking up and down the stairs, lifting low weight. I do like the 5 and I think it's 8, but they're real low barbells.
Sure.
The little things like that. Just being intentional about moving our bodies. And then like I spoke about the foods that we eat, being intentional about that. And it's been really challenging, I know, for me with this pandemic, because you want to get in there and bake and everything like that, which is okay.
Yeah, in moderation.
In moderation. We want to make sure that we're also putting some of those good deposits in as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's think about intellectual.
So intellectual, for me, what I like to do, I love podcasts. I love rain. So you mentioned you're from Detroit. I'm from Highland Park, which is right next door to Detroit.
Okay.
Born and raised. And so, but now I live in Southern California. We get no rain here. And so for me, listening to the rain, watching, I go online and I just find rain sounds. I have the app on my phone where I can hear the rain. I just love that. So doing those types of things, I think, to be able to tap into that.
I would add, if I may, my mother, who's now passed away, but we were big Scrabble players. She was a word gameaholic. And so I just recently, because it's been fairly recently since she passed away, I finally pulled out my Scrabble board last week. And it's been almost a year since I played. It just, I do that and I play myself. I play 2 hands. That's, intellectual. I have word games on my phone, little puzzles. She loves Sudoku, so occasionally I'll try that. So I would consider that intellectual self-care as well. Just doing things to keep this thing moving, so that we can, and our brains will age more healthily. Let's talk emotional self-care. What do you consider fitting in that category?
emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's tough.
I know it's a little tricky.
Emotional self-care for me is learning how to adult. Because especially depending on how you were raised, being able to handle situations as an adult, not, reverting back to that hurt little girl, or reverting back to those times when you were at a particular age where that growth was stunted.
Sure.
Really learning how to just be a truth teller.
That's good. I love that, learning how to adult. We see all these little memes like, I don't feel like adulting today, and we laugh about it, but there's something to be said about someone who is emotionally whole enough and emotionally mature enough to deal with things as an adult. I like that.
So when I say that, I know a lot of times people are saying, all the bills that we have to pay, and when they say I don't feel like adulting, all of the responsibilities that come with being an adult. But for me, adulting also means being able to take care of myself emotionally.
That's right. I'm a big journaler, and I write, and I just get, and you're a writer. You can talk about that a little bit, but that just getting stuff out of me and onto paper, and every once in a while when I'm sleep deprived, on Facebook, which I gotta watch that, but just sometimes just getting that out is something that helps me. It just it releases a pressure valve for me sometimes as well. A little trickier in the pandemic, but our world is starting to open up a little bit. Socially, how can we care for ourselves in a social realm? What would you suggest?
Well, I think just socially, surrounding ourselves, finding a tribe. For me, that was the biggest thing, especially coming to California. I don't have any family here.
Oh, wow.
Outside of the family that I created. But I had to be intentional about finding that tribe of women who had the same sensibilities, who had the same likes, you know what I mean? That spoke to me, because I could easily, as an introvert, I could find 101 things to do inside the house. I make sure I'm a part of Jewel Diamond Taylor's Women on the Grow tribe, and so I make sure whenever there's an event, a retreat, a travel opportunity, that I'm there, because that's how I reconnect. So socially, for me, making sure that I'm with women that I can uplift and that uplift me as well.
Yeah, I love the tribe. That was good. Yeah, and being willing, I would say, to release those people who don't fit the tribe characteristics. Being willing to, I may have known you since I was 15 years old, but you are not bringing me joy. And I use that, pun is always intended. If you are not bringing me joy, if you're not uplifting me, if you're not helping me to be a better woman, a better mom, a better partner, whatever, what's the point, right? Time is fleeting. And that happened for me when I turned 50. I turned 50 a couple years ago, and I realized that, Lord willing, this is halftime. I'll get to 100. That'd be great. But the reality is there's probably more time behind me than in front of me. And so I need to be more judicious about how I use it. And it was that moment, Yetta, I said, I'm not spending any more time with people who don't bring me joy. And for whatever reason, we're in the same church, in the same sorority, in the same whatever. If I have to be there, check, but I'm not going to choose to do that, right?
Exactly.
Which takes us to the next one, spiritual self-care. What would you say fits in that category?
So spiritual, so I know a lot of people would say prayer, and I don't want to leave prayer out, but for me, the way I was going to mention meditation, the way that I look at prayer is our time where we go to God for counsel almost, you know what I mean? So we can tell him what's happening and what's going on. But meditation is when we get quiet and we can hear the answer.
Look at that.
So making sure that we're meditating and that we're getting still enough to hear the answer. So spiritually, for me, making sure that I take that quiet time so that I can hear what God is trying to tell me.
Yeah. I love that answer. And I remember learning that was kind of the definition of meditation. Prayer is us talking to God, but that meditation is us being quiet and listening and hearing what God has to say to us. Thank you very much for sharing that. Well, that is the end of my formal questions. What else might we talk about? What else do you want to offer, if anything, around self-care that we haven't talked about during this period of time?
Well, I think you spoke a little bit on it, and if you don't mind, I did bring my book because I wanted to
please
a little bit of this monologue.
Okay.
It's called Offer It Up. And I think it's the closing monologue from.
Is it Butterfly Confessions? I have that. I almost pulled it up.
And so this is a little snippet of the closing monologue.
Please.
When I met Sonny, it was a not so sunny Sunday. I had just spent the day before in a psych ward because I felt that I no longer wanted to be here. I sat there scared, afraid that I could no longer do it alone, silently chanting, I am a true work in progress. I am the product of a praying grandmother. I am a true work in progress. I am the product of a praying grandmother. When I met Sonny, my wings were completely broken. I had spent the last 7 years in a verbally and emotionally abusive relationship and almost lost my life behind it. Sonny wasn't your average therapist. She was a beautiful cinnamon brown complexion with a dollop of caramel. Her sister locks were always well manicured, and she was always dressed as if she had just come from church. They were Sundays after all. In fact, I saw Sonny every Sunday for 3 years straight. In the beginning, I didn't talk much. I didn't know where to start. Did I start with why I ended up in a psych ward? Did I go all the way back to childhood? I sat there silently chanting. I said a boom, chicka boom. I said a boom, chicka boom. She interrupted my thoughts by politely asking if I wanted some tea. I shook my head yes, and she sat a beautiful turquoise, orange, and brown saucer in the shape of a butterfly in front of me and placed the matching teacup on top. She began pouring, and as the tea filled my cup, it began to run over, and she started chanting, you must have an empty cup, my sister. You must have an empty cup. You have given to everyone but yourself, and your cup is now empty. We're going to work on making sure that your cup remains full so that when you're giving, you give from your saucer. That is your overflow, your excess. Never give from your cup, because when your cup is empty, so are you. You can't give from an empty cup and expect to remain whole. And remember, whenever you're not sure, offer it up.
Oh. No.
So for me, self-care and making sure that your cup is full so that you can give from your overflow is the ultimate definition of what self-care means to me.
Dr. Yetta Young, there was no more perfect way to end this time together. Thank you so much for offering of your overflow to the One Crisis from Crazy campaign. I really appreciate it. And I believe, as I said a couple weeks ago, this is the beginning of many great things we'll be doing together. I'm so excited. I hope you see the butterflies in the background. That was my mom's favorite thing. So thank you for that. Be well, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.